What's going on? What's going on, everyone? How you doing today, man? Hey, we are back at it. Manhood Moments podcast. We're excited about being back with you. I know we were gone for a little bit, but we're back. Sometimes life takes us through transitions and we have to switch jobs and all that other good stuff. But man, we are happy to be back with you. And fellas, what's going on out there? T. Patrick, T. Bird, join me in. What's happening with you, man?
A whole lot. I was gone to Oklahoma City for 2 weeks. So I'm
Okay.
finally a certified firearms instructor. So I was gone for 2 weeks. Came back on a Thursday, washed my clothes, got a haircut, packed my gear up, met my parents that Friday morning, drove down to New Orleans, saw my daughter graduate that Saturday. And then
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. And then that Sunday was Mother's Day and my birthday, but we had to head back. So I drove my parents back up here. So my dad said it was the first trip in like 40 years that he didn't have to drive. He sat passenger seat the whole time, and then my mom was in the back. So it was pretty cool to spend my birthday with the people that gave me life for those 9.5 hours, just talking and catching up. So that was good.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, man. Happy belated birthday to you, man.
Thank you,
Got a whole
thank
new
you.
year. Have you looked at the outlook on what this new year going to bring? Any New Year's resolutions?
I don't really make any.
Uh-huh.
I just try to get better each day, each month. Just find something to kind of work on, whether it's spiritual. Some of it could just be like, why controlling my anger, things like that. But I would say, man, just keeping my health good, my mental health on a steady plane, making sure the kids are good. 48, so I'm gonna see what this new year brings. So
That's it.
that's where
That's
I'm
it,
at.
man. Man, once again, man, happy birthday and congratulations to your little lady, man. I know that's a hard job to, get your children through college, man. So it's exciting. So
And what's wild is like I had one of those Facebook moments, like memories. And there was
mhm.
that 4 year when she graduated high school, and it's funny to see her 4 years later. She graduated, but she was focused and knocked her books out.
That's what I'm talking about. T. Patrick,
Tony
what's going on?
Tony got one down. You know what I mean? I'm a little envious there. I ain't even started yet. I got some years. So I mean, yeah, that's a huge accomplishment there. With me, nothing really. Just getting acclimated to my new role. About to start
Congrats
traveling.
again.
I haven't finalizing my travel schedule for the rest of the year, so should be
Okay.
interesting. I'll be somewhere the next what is it? What we got? 8 months? No, we ain't got that long left. But I'm traveling the rest of the year. I'm only not traveling 2 months, so it'll be cool. I'm gonna get to see a lot of places,
Okay.
Good.
and things like that. So I'm excited about that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, live
Meet
that
the people.
life.
Well, meet the people.
Hmm.
Try to manage this weight. Last time I did all that traveling, I picked up all the weight that I lost sitting at home during COVID. So you know what I mean. It's hugging me now. So
Said, got to get out there and start that walking again.
I went walking yesterday, and
Hmm.
I had to sit down twice, as embarrassed as I am
Hey, it's a
for that.
start.
Right.
That's what
That's
Well,
it.
counts. It's a
Tony,
start.
Tony, normally I push through, but I don't know. I hit 40, and now all of a sudden, like I said, the body got to warm
That
up like
mental
like an
strength,
old
man. You
Buick,
gotta.
right? I got to turn. You know what I mean? I can't just fire up like I used to.
Yeah.
So that's it, man. Well, man, I'm excited about being here. You all know that I transitioned from Left One Academy, Higher Ed Academy. Now I'm back in the St. Louis area with my wife, and at another higher ed academy that seems to have some exciting potential. So and just the environment and opportunity to continue to grow. But what I'm most excited about is the opportunity to really start to build with no more hiding and to expand, not just from manhood moments, but also identify a space where we can start to offer those classes that we were talking about and really help build our community and help build the men. So we're planning to go, and I'm going to let the cat out the bag. We're looking at doing a live Manhood Moments podcast where we have an audience and everything. So stay tuned for those of you joining us and you join us on the rebroadcast, stay tuned because you're going to see a lot of information coming for that. And really bringing things into fruition. So we got some exciting things in the horizon. But tonight, man, we have an awesome guest just joining us. I mean, this young man, and I call him young because we're about the same age. He came into my life as when I was growing as a DEI specialist. I'm not an expert yet, but I think I'm a specialist. So and somebody told me about him, and I started looking him up and just the work that he was doing, and the fact that when I look at him, I see me because I see a black man that's doing this work and doing it authentically. And so tonight we have Dr. William T. Lewis as joining us tonight. And I want to read just a little bit of his bio. You all know I don't normally read bios, but I want to read his. It says he's a nationally recognized diversity and inclusion thought leader, and that by itself speaks volumes, right? And he's an entrepreneur, is an advisor and consultant to university presidents and small to mid-sized business leaders. As a founder and president of Wheelhouse Global, Dr. Lewis leads a team of organizational development experts who help companies win. Right. Remember that he helps them win. Right. He's a co-author of the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, NADA Standards in Professional Practice, which is what we use across the board. If you're trying to find DEI standards, and if you're an aspiring DEI professional, you want to connect with those because they really help to align, right, and what we do and what the expectations of DEI specialists is. He is also the author of Sweet Potatoes and Pumpkin Pies: Conversation with my white friends about race, which he just released in 2022. He's a former chief diversity officer and has led diversity and inclusion efforts at three highly acclaimed colleges and universities: Indiana University, Bridgewater State University, and Virginia Tech University. He formerly serves as a special consultant to the president for belonging, equity, and inclusion. Right. He serves the community of Winston-Salem as an advisory board member of the Black Philanthropy Initiative, or BPI. He also is a member of the board of directors of the United Way in Forsyth County, and he's a trustee for leadership in Winston-Salem. He earned his PhD in higher education administration from Indiana University, Bloomington, Illinois. He holds a master's degree in social work, and he's dedicated his entire profession to live in the spirit of his social work background by providing a voice for the voiceless and creating inclusive spaces for each person to reach their full potential. He's also served proudly in the United States Marine Corps, and he is married, right? He and his wife have a blended family. So, man, I don't think I can say anything else. Dr. William, what's going on, man? How
Uh,
you doing today?
man, let me tell you, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for reading the bio. You did not have to do that. And so I'm honored that you did do that so much. I want to say it's just a pleasure to be with you fellas today. Thank you so much. I'm doing good. And I'm
Good.
ready for the conversation. Just listening to you all, I'm ready. And let me tell you something. When you talk about trying to get up at 40, how about trying to get up at 50? I reached down trying to tie my shoe, man. I gotta hold on to something. I gotta look for some carpet for some furniture to leverage myself so I can get back up. And so I'm with it all day long, T. Patrick, without a doubt. But I'm ready for the conversation, y'all.
That's it, man. And we're both at 50, and so I know the struggle is real, boy.
Let me
So
tell you.
It sure is.
I want to jump into that conversation because we know right now we just had another tragic event, right? And that tragic event was really something that has rocked our country, but has not been given the same attention. I think sometimes we're becoming desensitized, and what I'm talking about is the shooting in Buffalo, right? And the racial motivation behind that. So you know. Dr. William, tell us, man, when you saw that and the situation, fellas join in. What's your thoughts, man, about this whole situation?
You know what? It for me, I tried to write something. I wrote this book, Sweet Potato or Pumpkin Pie: Conversations with My White Friends About Race. And so I was kind of reflecting on the book and reflecting on what I saw on the news in Buffalo, and it just brought me to this place to where my white friends and colleagues cannot fall asleep. They can't go back to sleep. In
Mm-hmm.
in 2020, we had this racial reckoning, and everybody was woke. It was like America was shaking awoke, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this whole notion around woke. And now it seems as if things have subsided and people are drifting off to sleep. Well, what we got to understand is that racism doesn't sleep.
It's true.
Oppression doesn't sleep. Hatred doesn't sleep. It's evil doesn't sleep. And so if we're going to have a more perfect union, and if we're going to be true to these statements that we made in the past around looking at Black Lives Matter and supporting Black Lives Matter, then we cannot go to sleep. And so I believe that what we saw in Buffalo, um, and I can't blame every white male. I can't blame every white person. But what I can say is that from what I've seen through the years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
it's been white men that have been killing up mass of black folks. And so for me, that tells me that there is a situation that needs to be addressed within the white male community. Now, again, some people are gonna come out and say, William, you can't say it's everybody. I understand that,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just telling you what I see. And what I see is a situation of hatred that is permeating throughout our society, and that's something that we need to address.
Because I see what happens is when it happens, people always it seems like when it's a white male that does it to anybody else, then they look at mental health issues. Is something wrong with him? When it's us, it seems like it's normalized. But when it comes to them, they always try to find that why did he do it? Was he alone or was he this? No, he was. And I saw a comment that somebody said that maybe at his age he wasn't comprehending things. Like he didn't have the capacity.
Mhm,
Mm-hmm.
He
mhm,
drew down on a white male, said excuse me, and kept going. So I mean, he planned it. He drove 300 or 3 hours to a
Mm-hmm.
location to an area where there's like a ban or a limit on high capacity guns. So you come in with your high power gun, where are you getting shot back at? With
That's true.
handguns. So to me, there was a bunch of things that he did ahead of time when he started shooting. And I just thought back to the black church. We are very welcoming when it comes to like a white person coming into our space. The black
mhm,
Mm.
church
mhm,
in
mhm,
South Carolina, he came in, he shot him up. The shopping center, probably the same way. The security guard said that he seemed suspicious, but we didn't, as a black community, didn't pretty much stop him. We didn't keep our eyes on him, and he just started shooting. So that's just my thought. I just see a
mhm.
couple different angles as far as like gun control, but it's the whole mental health thing. No, man, he knew what he was doing.
He was extremely lucid. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was strategic. I mean, this had nothing to do with no mental health. He was in his right mind.
Yes.
He at the time of the shooting, and so he didn't have no temporary mental lapse, no temporary. Nah, he was in his right mind at the time of the shooting. He knew what he wanted to do, so much so that he
Mm-hmm.
posted a manifesto telling what he was going to do and why he was going to do it. And so he knew what he was going to do and he knew why he was going to do it. And he planned out what he was going to do. So this whole thing around mental illness, nah, that we can't buy that.
On
You know,
a
the
soft
interesting.
target,
Well,
Yeah.
grocery store.
the interesting thing is about you know me. I have to quote somebody, but you know what I mean. Lupe Fiasco. I ain't done that in a while. Said that that fear is such a weak emotion. I really buy into that because I mean I think if we strip this thing down to its most basic components, it originated with fear. It is the fear that has been pumped into these young white males, and these individuals who are doing it know what they're doing, and saying you are going to be replaced. And if you
Mhm.
don't stand up and fight for your race, and you don't stand up and fight for uh, your beliefs, then you're going to be a permanent minority. I mean, they see the writing on the wall,
Hmm.
and the discussion is that, and that narrative is being pushed. It is interesting that Louis Farrakhan said that when Donald Trump got, you know, elected president, that he was going to take America to hell on a rocket ship, and I really think that, you know what I mean. We got some good boosters going right now, because it's really stoked those fears that, something other is going to happen, but it really is stripped off uh the veil, that
Mhm.
really thin veil of white supremacy, and how deep it actually goes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
But
sure Dr.
go
Lewis will
ahead.
probably touch upon it, but I watched one of your podcasts. You talked about the Southern strategy, and I
Mhm.
saw where like Reagan did it, Trump did it. So if we want to get into it later
Yeah, talk
on,
about
that
that. Yeah.
works. But T. Patrick, I learned a whole lot just from that, hearing it and then looking it up.
So,
Absolutely.
Dr. Lewis, go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, but actually, I want to before I talk about the Southern strategy, let's really talk about the origins of this replacement theory,
Okay.
right? So when we talk about the origins of the replacement theory, if we look at 1676, 100 years before the Revolutionary War, which was 1776, we had this thing called the Bacon's Rebellion. And when you look at Bacon's Rebellion, this is before the slavery was already 1619 was when slavery was kind of we understand it to be brought to the shores of the colonial times. But what happened with Bacon's Rebellion is that you saw a lot of stuff. You saw uh, the poor labor class in the colonies at the time. At that time, they were not considered white. They were not considered. They were considered ethnic from their European backgrounds, right? And so race was not part of the mix at that particular time. It was more
Mhm.
so ethnic enclaves and solidarity. But when Bacon and his revolutionaries tried to revolt up against the rich plantation owners,
Mhm.
these are white men, and they had some free black folks with them. The white man said, you know what? The rich ones, the more wealthier white men were like, hey, what we need to do is we need to come together
Mhm.
and come together around this whole notion around race. And so therefore we'll remove indentured servitude,
Mhm.
and our working class will be a more slave working class,
Mhm.
and we'll make the black folks the slaves. And so therefore, I know y'all want some of this money, and we're not gonna give you any, but we'll give you some privilege and some
Mhm.
solidarity around race. And so you can be connected to us around race, but we ain't gonna give you no money.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the genesis of the replacement theory. So said so that we won't be replaced, we'll come together in solidarity around racial identity. And so now we begin to see a division between white and black in the colonial times before we were considered the United States of America. This is 100 years before we were Americans. So now this notion, this mentality has been embedded within the psyche before we were in Americans. So in the psyche of the colonial folks before were Americans. So
Okay.
now when you begin to look at this replacement theory and you begin to look at the Southern strategy,
Uh-huh.
all that is nothing but rinse and repeat as to what started in 1676.
Mhm.
Southern strategy just basically says, hey, you know what? We can't say the N word any longer.
Yeah.
Can't say that any longer. So what we're gonna do is because we want to get and remember we a lot of African Americans we vote Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, we voted Republican,
Mm.
right? And so now when things have shifted, when we moved over to the Democratic side of the house and most white people vote Republican, when things shifted, the Republican Party wanted more of the Southern Democrats
Mm-hmm.
to vote for them. And so they developed what they call the Southern strategy,
Mm-hmm.
which is we're going to use language, what they call dog whistle language.
Dog whistle, yeah.
Certain
Mm-hmm.
certain language right now, since we can't say the N word and we can't be overtly racist, we're going to say, hey, you know what about the urban? We don't want we want to have war on crime. We want to have urban renewal. And so
Mm-hmm.
now the urban renewal and the war on crime, those are code words for race,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now what they were doing is they said, you know what, we want to get more of the white folks down south who could possibly come our way to vote our way, but we're going to do it in a very subtle way. And so when Donald Trump said that, hey, they want to build low income housing in the suburbs, what was he saying? He was saying
They
they
want to
want
put
more
black.
black people in the suburbs. Who was
Yeah.
he talking
Yeah.
to? The
Mhm.
white women. So
Yep.
he was using fear,
Fear.
right? Oh my! And what happens when you think about black folks in the suburbs? You think about this mad, angry black man. Well, guess what? The mad, angry black man ain't the one killing up everybody.
That's true.
Nope.
Yep.
At
Yeah.
all.
That and I think that goes back to, you mentioned earlier how in 2020, that time between 2020 and when we had the murder of George Floyd, and then what we tend to see is um, we get those low hanging fruit, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We'll make Juneteenth a holiday,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's changed, and as a way to appease or keep, just kind of keep folks
yeah,
quiet.
yeah,
But we really don't get any real change. We don't get really any real access or equity when it comes to the changes in policies, the changes in laws, the implementation of the laws, the implementation of resources into our community, and the things that really impact our sustainability and our
mm-hmm,
generational wealth.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the thing that I didn't realize until um, really until I really got deep into this, right, into this anti-racism work, is when you really want to talk about change, that change is is really incumbent upon voting,
Mhm.
right? And what we have to do is we and the power structure has been such that they have rigged the voting. That's why you're beginning to see these voting laws after the big lie that happened in 2019. You begin to see the red states and the Republicans trying their best to disenfranchise people from the vote. Because if we know it, and we know it through history, we actually saw it during Reconstruction in the South. We saw in Reconstruction in the South when the at the time where the freed blacks were given the right to vote through the 14th Amendment.
Mhm.
We began to see 15th Amendment. We began to see the fact that the change in power was beginning to shift,
Mhm.
and you were seeing more black folks in power. So what happens, y'all? If you
Mhm.
see more black folks in power, what happens to the psyche of those who are in power? Oh, they're going to do the same thing to me that I
Mhm.
did to them. This
Yes.
whole replacement theory concept. So this is
Yep.
not a new thing,
Yep.
Mhm.
right? This is something that's been going on ever since oppression has been rooted within American society,
Mhm.
right? And so I just really believe that when we want to think about uh, changing, changing is connected to policies. Policies are connected to voting. Voting is connected to, and I'm not saying voting for black people. I'm saying voting for people who will have your best interest at heart.
Mhm.
And so we can't just say, oh, let's vote the Democratic ticket. We can't just say let's vote we got to vote the ticket, vote the person
Hmm.
who is going to make the most impact on my daily life. And voting really happens at not at the national level, but it's really at the local
The
level.
local, yeah.
Is at the local level, and that's where we really got to make those changes. Is to begin to vote people in that's going to work on behalf of redistributing power.
Do you think it's possible um, that power shift can happen? Because if you think about it, it's always been imbalance, right? So and ever since after slavery and
Yeah.
Reconstruction, that was an intentional effort to create the
Mm-hmm.
a legalized imbalance, just the same as slavery was legalized, but now, figure out a different way to do that, and
Yeah.
all the different compromises that came about that continues to
Mm-hmm.
enforce that
Mm-hmm.
that inequitable reconstruction of our country. So do you think it could ever really there
You,
could ever be a balance?
you know what, Saint, and I don't want to be flippant in this comment, but we know that through God all things are possible, right?
Hmm.
And so is it? I don't think it's impossible,
Hmm.
right? Now, do I think that is something that will be a challenge? Absolutely, I most certainly believe that. Do I believe that there is a structure that's already in place that will hold on to that thing until people die? Absolutely, I
Hmm.
believe that. But I also believe that when people begin to connect into humanity, and when they begin to move closer to each other from a place of love, when white folks and black folks and whomever connects in with each other from a place of love, I believe real change can happen. I
Hmm.
believe Dr. King was assassinated not because of his fight for civil rights, but he was assassinated for his fight for bringing poor white men and poor black men together.
Yep.
And so because once you bring, that's a very powerful poverty,
Hmm.
when you can bring folks who don't have a lot together to band against those who have.
Hmm.
That's a very powerful block right there. That's power, and that will force the redistribution. And so those in power, who are mainly in America, mainly white men,
Hmm.
when we look at it, those white men who are in power, they're doing everything they can so that we, poor white men, middle class white men, poor black men, middle class white men, do not conjoin together and unify
Hmm.
under one strategy. And that strategy is the redistribution of power, relinquishing fear. And if we were to do that, we would see that change.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd take it a step further and say it has to. It has it the the probability is very high. Otherwise, we
Hmm.
wouldn't be seeing the effort against it. I mean, there is it's almost like we're in this big push, um, kind of in most societies that we've seen,
Hmm.
where there was an imbalance.
Mhm,
Near the end. You think South Africa, places like that. I mean, extreme measures, and we're
mhm,
getting to that point to where now the racism is not, subtle.
mhm,
Hmm.
It's
mhm,
there,
mhm,
and we want people to know in many respects.
mhm,
I don't see how you can continue as a politician seeing black people killed in mass and saying, "Oh, well, that's a mental illness." Well, then,
mhm,
well, then, where's our funding
mhm,
to address
mhm,
that?
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
it's not guns. It's
mhm,
it's it's that one individual person in every single situation.
mhm,
So
Hmm.
we got a lot of mentally ill people out here with access to guns, which
mhm.
is a problem that we're not addressing because we don't want to address the gun issue
Yeah,
because it's dog whistle. So I mean, like, I think
yeah.
it has to happen because the potential is there. The
Mhm,
demographics are moving in such a way that it can't be stopped. I mean, that's just
mhm,
the country is becoming more and more
mhm,
diverse by the
mhm,
Hmm.
day, and that's terrifying to and upsetting to the power struggle. So now I just see it as we're in a space where individuals are desperate. I
Hmm.
mean, even Fox News is promoting this,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? They're openly saying you're going to be replaced.
Yeah.
They're not even hiding it anymore, and that's what and we know what audience
Hmm.
listens to and tunes in to Fox News, and they're speaking directly to that. And I'm like, I don't see there being an effort this blatant than having seen, okay, this country elected a mixed race president that identifies as black.
Hmm.
And so that was a shock.
Yeah.
And we've
Yep.
seen the pendulum swing in a whole
Yeah.
nother way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that concerns me, and I know we normally don't go into like all this political, but it's just in alignment with what we're talking about. One of the things and I am excited about, like the confirmation of Supreme Court Ketanji Brown, and then also just I know that recently um, that the Biden administration has also brought in the first openly gay
Hmm.
individual who happens to be a female of color. But the thing is it seems to me that the focus is a lot on their identity instead of on their qualifications.
Hmm.
And to some degree, that kind of seems like it's minimizing the hard work that these individuals have done,
Hmm.
and although those things are good, but for instance, I'm in an inaugural role right now, but the inaugural role didn't come with he's the first black
Yeah.
individual to work in this inaugural role.
Yeah.
It came with he it's an
Yeah.
inaugural role. So
Yeah. 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 That's an interesting point, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't have a position on it or either
mhm,
way, right? And so I'm still dealing with it myself, as I think about the first black. Here's the thing. When do we stop having the first?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
so that's that if I had a position, that's my position is that
Mhm,
you know it's big because you're the first. I mean, you
mhm,
know we need to have we should not it should not take another 20 years, it should not take another 60 years to
mhm,
see another president of color, right? it,
mhm,
it, it shouldn't it shouldn't do that. It shouldn't take another 20 years, another 30 years, another 100 years, another 200 years to see a vice president that's a woman
mhm,
and of color, right? And so it shouldn't take another 250 something years to see another uh, Supreme Court justice that's an African American woman,
mhm,
right? And so I think that so the it's momentous because it's the first, but to your point, Saint, is that these people are overly qualified.
yeah. Yes.
When you put them against their peers, when you put a Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson
Mhm,
against the senators who were interrogating her, you put her against their record.
yes.
They're mediocre
yes.
Yeah.
against her record.
Or either the other Supreme Court justices
A-
who
abs-
have been recently
Yes.
nominated, and
yes,
placed into the seat, confirmed.
absolutely. And so it is one of those things to where I believe where it's the chicken or the egg, right? And so y'all remember when you had the Miss Black USA.
Hmm.
Well, the reason we had the Miss Black USA is because the black women couldn't get on the Miss
Yes.
USA,
Hmm.
right? And so you're gonna have the first until white society, and I think it's happening, but it's still
Hmm.
happening kind of slowly. But we're going to continue to see first until white society opens its heart,
Hmm.
right? Opens its heart to its fellow black citizens,
Yeah.
and its fellow uh, brothers and sisters of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no gene in me that says that I'm any different than you. You got to open your heart to me, and then we will see more, and we will get away from the first. But what the first just tells me that we still got some issues that we got to work through here in America.
Yeah. There's a question. I want to go back to it. It says, is it really fear or fact that they know that privilege of having white skin allows them to be comfortable to manifest these crimes against us? And so that question was asked a
Yeah,
little when we were talking about the shooting in Buffalo.
yeah.
Anybody got a thought or comment to that question?
My thought is, and I don't want to take over the conversation. I think it's both. The privilege allows them to go out there and shoot up folks,
Mhm.
and the fear is that there is an unrealistic fear that somebody's taking something from them.
Mhm.
So they have the privilege to go shoot up folks and not get shot and killed themselves.
Mhm.
That's what I was going to say. Their privilege is they can get arrested and have to go
Without
to
being,
court.
yeah, exactly.
And that is so amazing to see, just how many. I saw on social media someone had put up kind of a mock-up of just the number of blacks that have been killed, and in encounters with police
Hmm.
versus the number of uh, young white males that have engaged in mass shootings,
Hmm.
and it's astonishing. I mean, it was really eye-opening that,
Mhm.
I wonder how anyone could look at that and say, "Wow, you know, um, there is we're everything's an even playing field, right? We can't be in a post-racial society if that exists, where
Hmm.
we've had a couple a young man and it could be shot in his own apartment
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
by an officer that that got confused,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, regardless of what the outcome was. It's just like, seriously, you know, we had to hold our breath during that situation because we were like, yet again, uh this probably won't go the way the way we hope it would go if we were
Hmm.
in a post-racial society, right? We had to think about that. We had to think about what was going to happen to what is it, Derek Chauvin? Is that his last
Hmm.
name? I guess.
Yeah. Chauvin.
In that situation, I remember when the verdict was read, I shut down everything. Right, all right. I got to turn around and pay attention to this verdict because and my heart was beating
Yeah.
so fast in that situation, right?
Hmm.
So there is that privilege that I know I can do this, um, and the consequences are going to be less severe. And I don't even know, they may even want to be martyrs. Who knows? They may
Yeah.
be looking for it, but it just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. And it was
Yeah.
just amazing how he was being detained. I saw a video of that, and you know a young lady's on the ground crying because she's calling for her mom. And it's just like, he wasn't slammed to the ground. You
Yeah.
know, no, he had a gun. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, look at January 6th,
Hmm.
2020, 21,
21.
2020.
Yeah.
Right. So look at so if you compare January 6, 2021 to the summer of 2020, and you see how many guards and how armed the
Hmm.
military, the police was as it relates to the protesters, and
Yeah.
you see protesters storming the United States Capitol while the vice president is in the Capitol conducting America's business. How many armed officers do we have? Now imagine if
We wouldn't
black
even
folk,
got that far.
yeah, boy, woo,
The target practice.
mm. That's the privilege,
Yeah.
right? That's the
Yes.
and that and let's look at this thing. Let's look at this thing and check it out. I was on the call with all my folks, my black folks, right?
Mhm.
We we wouldn't even thought to do that. But y'all, let's look at why we wouldn't have thought to do that.
Mhm.
We wouldn't have thought to do that because we know the consequences would have been death. That's
Mhm.
the privilege.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the privilege that those white folks, and I ain't saying everybody, those white folks who marched, they did not have a thought in their head that they possibly could die
Mhm.
for having an insurrection on the United States Capitol. But racism is so powerful is that the black folks in America, the ones that I talked to,
Mhm.
said if we would have marched up on the Capitol in the same vein that they did, we would have been killed.
We wouldn't have thought it because we would have been killed.
Right.
Yeah. And but we see this perpetuated over and over. We see that even in vagrancy, right? So small groups. If you got a small group of out when we were back in St. Louis, and so over in the North County section, at this car wash, that's where a lot of African American young people meet with their vehicles, their
Mm-hmm.
motorcycles, things like that. And that's where they go. And I remember seeing the law enforcement, like, they wasn't doing anything but sitting on the lot, right? They
Mm-hmm.
they just sitting there talking, no, nothing crazy, anything, but running them off. But I've been in spaces, if you go a little bit farther west or you go a little bit farther south, you see, that they could sit there all night,
Mm-hmm.
and come together. That's where they gonna meet or whatever. And there is no police action. There's no pushing. There's no, you need to clear this area, whatever the case is. So we constantly see that happening.
And they're
Yeah.
not charged with what I do. We're getting charged with street demonstration. They're getting let go. We're gonna call their parents. They're getting arrested for that. It's in their
Yeah.
criminal history, street demonstration, and we know
Yeah.
what that
Yep.
is.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question, says, why do we always have to be asked? Why do we always have to ask to be placed at the table when we would stop settling for just being in a room? No,
Mm-hmm.
and that really stood out to me because I remember sitting listening to a Native American conversation, and one of the things that this Native American leader said, this is maybe a couple months ago, he said, "We don't want the U.S.'s table." He said, "We don't want to sit it. We don't want to seat there." They said, "We had our own table, so we want that back." That was his comments in
Yeah.
Oklahoma. He said, "We had our own. That's what we want back. We don't want to. We don't want to be to settle with just having another a seat at this table, because that we know that table is unfair. That table does not have our best interest in mind, and neither the things that are served at that table is not healthy for us."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. It's a provocative question, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm interpreting the question. So when I think about me,
Hmm.
right, like I know no other country than America.
Hmm.
I was born and raised in America. I enlisted in the military to fight if had to for America, and so everything that I do will help to support the development for America to reach her full potential, right? And so although the table wasn't meant for me because my ancestors were stolen
Hmm.
from their land to come over here and work this land with never an intent for them to benefit from their work.
Hmm.
But now that I am a descendant of the ancestors, it is my job to do all that I can to not only get into the room, but to make the changes that I can make in my own circles of influence, so that
Hmm.
the next generation don't have to deal with the stuff that I'm dealing with.
Yeah, because when I first read the comment, I thought about Black Wall Street, where they were building their own and then bombed and tore up. So I just feel like sometimes that we have to get in that room to have some impact. But
I don't see how we separate anyway. I mean, it's a great idea to think about that, but to the point. I mean, America's all we know. I mean, and like it or not, there is a table, and
Mhm.
somebody has to be at it. Why not? And that's the way I take. That's the way I operate.
Yeah.
I had people laugh at me, because I act like I belong. You don't even let me in the room, because if you do, you know what I mean. I'm gonna get at the table, put my feet
Mhm.
on it, and get
Mhm.
busy. You know what I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
and not feel bad. And even if you have to usher me out, that's
Mhm.
fine. I'll find another table, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
keep going to tables because I recognize the influence that I have in the positions, and that's why I work with the people. You know what I mean, to institute those changes, and it's not comfortable.
Mhm.
But I don't
Mhm.
see how we have a separate table because I mean,
Mhm.
you can build it, but somebody's gonna come along in the interest of their interest and try to knock it down, and we've seen it happen time and time again. And I've always figured that the since I'm in it, the best place to be is in position. And like I say, I'm gonna play my position. And if you let me in the room and sit at that table, I'm not shocked or impressed by the fixtures.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I'm I'm interested in the business, and I'm right there in it.
Yeah, yeah. I most definitely, and I want to go back. I like the comment. I also like the comment that Leveda put on here as well. Yes, but let them come ask to be at our table sometimes. So when I think about this table, right, this proverbial table, this metaphorical
Mhm.
table, you
Mhm.
know, my mind is going out to entrepreneurship, and 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 so for me, when somebody would ask me, well, William, what do you think about reparations? Russell Simmons once said that owning your own business is your own reparations, because that's where you begin to have controlling interest of your money, and also of where you can spend and how you can spend your money,
Mhm.
if you're in the position to do so, right? And so I think about this notion of this table,
Mhm.
these superstar rappers and actors or whatever. We have a whole generation of kids that have come from rappers. These kids, they on some next level wealth, right? I'm
Mhm.
thinking about Snoop Dogg, for example. You think
Mhm.
about Snoop Dogg, right? Now, I grew up on Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg is only about 2 or 3 years older than me,
Mhm.
right? That man is worth hundreds, $100 million or so. His kids are set. So here's the question: when I look at Snoop Dogg, when I look at Jay Z,
Mhm.
when I look at these rappers, I'm looking at the rappers that grew
Mhm.
that started getting into fame in the '90s when I was coming up.
Mhm.
Okay, what happened? Well, they found a niche. They found something that they could do well, and it was lucrative in the entertainment industry. Whatever they did before, a while they were doing it, they did it, but they were able to transition to where now they're able to set themselves and their families trajectory to a whole nother level. So
Mhm.
when I think about the table, I'm trying to create some space where I can get in some rooms. I can learn from some people. I can get some connections so that I can begin to set my table for the next generation. I'm 50 years old.
Mhm.
Now, when we look at Steve Harvey, he said he didn't get his wealth until later in life. So maybe I get my wealth to later. I'm later in my life as well, right? But the fact of the matter is, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set some tables for the next
For the next
generation.
generation.
Yeah.
Uh, and then people will come, and some people are now coming to ask me to be a part of their tables,
Mhm.
right? But I think that we got to have that mindset too. So I'm with the sister that says, why ask for somebody else's table? Why not get somebody to come to our table? But we gotta put the work in. Got to
Yeah.
put the work in and get those tables set.
Mhm. I was
Yeah.
looking at that Steph. That her response was, "Sometimes you just get tired of getting in the room is not enough. I'm tired of being somebody's hard chocolate drop,
Yeah.
just so they could say they met their diversity quota."
Well, hey, you know what? I shared this with one of my former employees that contacted me and felt like it's like, Teron, I already know why I'm getting this job because you know what I mean, XYZ. And I was like, does it matter what the reason is that you got it? The bottom line is you got it. It's what you gonna do when you get there.
Yeah.
You know
Exactly.
what I mean? That's
Hmm.
the thing. So many people are so distracted by, oh, I made it. This looks nice in here. That you don't want to they don't want to upset the apple cart. Uh,
Mm.
you know what I mean, or do the things that are going to drive that change.
Hmm.
Hmm.
There,
Man.
it's just
Yeah.
kind of like the example of the rappers and the kids. We've got so much wealth out here that we've probably never seen in many generations with all
Hmm.
of the successful athletes and uh,
YouTubers,
entertainers.
Yeah.
I mean, and
influencers.
entrepreneurs that are out. I mean, you've got so many big names,
Hmm.
but it's like we haven't figured out how to make that work as a collective.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what's interesting to me
Hmm. Hmm.
because
Hmm.
as a collective, to have Jay Z and Beyonce worth billions, and then you've got Dr. Dre almost worth a billion, and Oprah, and all, and ain't nobody sat down and said we gonna come and create this. We
Hmm.
gonna do this. Maybe they
Conglomerate.
have. Maybe that because I'm telling you, I know what I would do if I had the money. That's why ain't nobody gave me the money yet. But
You go even out the
hey,
playing field.
we all gonna have tables. You feel me? Like
Right.
I got a big table, and I mean, I'm like, okay, let's let's come together. And
Yeah.
I get it,
Yeah.
but I think so many people buy into
Hmm.
me and mine that conservative mindset that they have once they get it. I got to keep
Hmm.
it, and I got to have
Yeah.
this generational wealth. You
Hmm.
know, and I'm just like, okay, listen, after so much money, money just becomes a concept. I mean, and maybe again, because I ain't got it, right?
Yeah, I'm waiting to get to that concept.
Right, because all that is you know you will never hold $1 billion in your hand. You'll
Yeah.
never be able to physically
Yeah.
just spend it like that, right?
Yeah.
It's just a concept that it's like, if I'm worth $1 billion, listen, if I was to give away half of that, I'm still rich. Like, you
Mm.
know what I mean? Even if I
Yeah.
was to invest half of that into something, and it's just interesting. Like I said, I'm not calling nobody out or whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, they made their
Yeah.
money, they do what they want to do with it, but it would
Hmm.
be interesting to see what would happen if we figured that out because we shouldn't still be trying to kick down uh doors to get to the table. We should be impressed by the table. We should already have tables set up. There's many
Mm.
restaurants that should be built that we
Yeah.
can all eat from.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
T Patrick, bro, I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying. We should already have tables set up. And so here's the thing. And this is something I've come to learn, right? And it's taken me
Hmm.
a minute to get here. Is that we have to work within our circles of influence,
Hmm.
and we can start setting those tables up now. So
Hmm.
my firm, we're a growing firm, right? We're doing some good stuff. The people I hire. See, one of the things is that I may not have the Jay Z or the Dr. Dre money,
Hmm.
but the people that I hire to do the work for me, I try to make sure that they look like me. And so that's one way to where I can help that dollar replicate itself
Hmm.
within my community. Right now, I don't have 100% staff that works for me that's of color, right? But I make sure that that I'm reaching out. Who can help me with this? Who can do this? And the more that when you can give when you can the money that you make and when you can give to somebody else that's in the black community,
Hmm.
then because people always ask why does the black dollar move out of the black community in a short period of time.
Hmm.
Well, one way to help it stay in the black community for a longer period of time is
Yep.
to begin to hire black people.
Hmm.
So when you got a plumber, and we do this already, right? But we got to think we do it, but we don't necessarily think about. I don't believe we don't think about the impact
Hmm.
of what we're doing. So when you reach out to that mechanic or to that plumber or to that restaurant, you are indeed helping to keep that dollar within the community to help the community build itself up, to build more tables.
So I want to shift this a little bit, the conversation a little bit, and so I want to ask a question, Dr. Lewis. What if you were to answer this question, DEI is this, but is not that, how would you respond to that question?
That's
So, and for those who don't know, I'm talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, because those become, that seems like it's a catchphrase right now. Everybody's bringing in, everybody's doing it, everybody, think they understand it. But DEI is this, but it's not that. How do you?
absolutely. So a couple of things, and if you know me, I can't answer just a yes or no. I'm gonna have to
Of
give
course.
some context. First of all, DEI, I'm gonna put DEIB, so I'm gonna put belonging right there. I'm going somewhere with belonging. DEIB is not anti-racism. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
So anti-racism is something totally different. When we talk about the work of anti-racism, this conversation we've been having for almost an hour around race, uh, that's part of the DEI conversation. To be honest with you, diversity officers in higher education and in corporate America really couldn't talk about race openly until 2020.
Mhm.
The presidents, the provosts, they don't want you to. If you talked about, oh no, that's we don't, we're not talking. We want to talk about the big umbrella, the big tent. We just can't solely talk about race. Now, interesting enough, they say, well, we want to bring in more
Diverse.
faculty of color, more students of color, but they don't want to talk about racism.
Mm-hmm.
The reasons why we don't have faculty of color or students of color on campus. They want you to bring them in, but they don't want you to talk about the issues that underlie why we don't get them, right? So that's the first thing that we have to look at. Now that I put that aside, now let's talk about DEI.
Mm-hmm.
Just quickly, diversity is the demographic, it's the fact, it's everything that makes me who I am. Diversity is not solely about race. What has happened through the history of the word, the evolution of the word, or the evolution of the understanding of the word, is that people have always moved to diversity just being race. Therefore, white folks don't see themselves in the diversity conversation. And yes, I said white folks in a generalized way, right? So let me be more politically correct and say some white folks don't see themselves in a diversity conversation. Because we have connected it more towards race. Understand this. Everybody, I don't care what color you are, how you identify, you are diverse. That's the first thing. Secondly, diversity does not equate to inclusion. Most people think, well, we got diversity, so we're inclusive. No,
No.
you just got diversity. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order for you to be inclusive, you have to be intentional by engaging. Let's go back to the table. You got to invite people to the table. Then you got to invite them to eat at the table. You just can't invite them to the table and don't ask them to eat. Now, some of y'all may know the metaphor now around the dance. Same thing. You invite me to dance. Some people say, well, inclusion is inviting to the dance. Well, no. You can be invited to the dance and still be a wallflower and nobody come ask you to dance.
That's true.
Inclusion is being asked to dance. Now we're being inclusive, so we're being intentional. Equity is this whole thing is where people say, well, we can't be equitable because we have to be fair. No, equity is that thing where you give people what they need in order for them to succeed. And what I need may be different than what T. Patrick needs, may be different than what Tony needs, may be different than what Saint needs in order for me to reach my full potential within that organization. And at the end of the day, diversity, equity, and inclusion, they are not the outcomes. The outcome is belonging. When you create an environment where people feel like they belong, when you feel like you can come to work, when you feel like you come to work with your IU hat on and your Looney Tunes shirt on, and you feel comfortable there, and nobody's gonna talk down about you and stereotype you, and you could do the work that you need. You got the tools to do your work. You're gonna reach your full potential, and the organization is gonna reach its full potential. that's what belonging is all about, is creating a space where I can reach my full potential. I can come to work and I love it. I'm going to wear the swag. I'm going to come in. I'm going to tell my friends about it. I'm going to go to the company picnic. Even though I'm pissed off right now, I'm going to do 110% because I feel like I belong. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, the outcome is belonging.
Gotcha. I got a question. Talk a little bit about your book.
Oh man, I
I'm a
love
sweet
that
potato
question
guy
right there.
myself, but
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm gonna see if y'all can see that sweet potato or pumpkin pie conversations I had with my white friends about race. This book was born out of crisis.
Okay.
2020, we had a crisis. 2020, I started doing having conversations very similar to this conversations with folks all around the country about race and racism. I started a podcast called Beyond Colorblind Podcast. I invited my white friends to sit down with me because I wanted to understand how my white friends and colleagues came to understand race and racism and allyship, right? Didn't want to make any generalizations. I wanted to talk to people directly, have a conversation with them. In that conversation, I asked folks this one question. Everybody asked the same question at the end of the conversation. Which do you prefer, sweet potato or pumpkin pie? Now, let me tell you why I asked that question. I asked that question because I grew up in the Midwest, grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas, I would go to visit my family's homes for the holidays, and there was all types of desserts around the table. And if you know me, you know I love chocolate cake. But if you know me, you also know that during Christmas and Thanksgiving, I love sweet potato pie. And so I'm going around everybody's house, eating up everybody's sweet potato pie, seeing whose pie is the best. Let me tell you, nobody can still come close to my mama's sweet potato pie. But I would eat everybody's sweet potato pie, right? And so then I got to thinking, you know what? It feels like to me that only Black people eat sweet potato pie, because when I would go to school, which was an integrated school, we didn't have sweet potato pie. We had pumpkin pie. When I would go to the big box restaurants, let's say like an Applebee's, an Old Charlie's, or some restaurant like that, they didn't serve sweet potato pie. They served pumpkin pie. When I would go to the hotels and stay at the hotels, they served pumpkin pie. When I would go to the stores looking for a pie, up not until recently when Patti LaBelle had the Patty pies, all I saw was pumpkin pie. So I said to myself, well, maybe white people only eat pumpkin pie. So I'm down in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, during the time of the protest. That's where I live. And so I invite my friends, and they were talking. I said, so well, y'all tell me what kind of pie you prefer between the two. My white friends and colleagues told me, they said, Will, overwhelmingly, they said sweet potato pie. Y'all blew my assumptions out of the water.
Really?
I was like, wow. And let me tell you something. I found some research from your great state of St. Louis. The St. Louis, Missouri Journal had an article that they did around sweet potato, the rivalry between sweet potato and pumpkin pie. And in that article, it said that sweet potato pie is the pie that is most dominant in the southern part of the United States, which makes sense.
Yep.
Because it's grown down here in the southern parts of the United States. And so there's a regional connection to sweet potato pie, but also more Black people eat sweet potato pie than white people. So I had to do that research to see. And when you look across the United States, you see up in the northern part and the western part of the United States, more people prefer pumpkin pie, and most of those people are white folks. And so there's a race connection, geographic connection. But for me, the assumption that I had that only white people ate pumpkin pie was blown out of the water with that whole notion. And so that's why I wrote the book. The book is really a book about blowing up assumptions and having conversations.
So when having a conversation with a white person about race, what are some of the things that, well, give us one point that you think that we should take, especially as being I'm gonna shift this a little bit and include it with being African American men in leadership. And we run into these spaces where we have to have these critical conversations, right? So how do we go about doing that? How?
Absolutely. So when we think about this as first of all, I think that if you notice my language through today, and I get excited when I talk about these conversations, but I'm trying my best not to generalize and stereotype people. So when I get into a place where I may make a generalization or a stereotype, I'm trying to say some.
Hmm.
I'm trying to move away from all, right? So instead of saying all white people, I'm trying to say some white folks, or very specifically the white men that we have seen through killing. Through we've seen the facts that we've seen these folks killed, and so I'm trying to keep my statements away from the generalization as possible. That first thing we have to do is be self-aware,
Hmm.
right? And so I'm trying to be self-aware as I enter into these conversations of my own biases and my own blind spots in these conversations. So that's the
Hmm.
first thing as a man, as someone who is who is trying to be responsible in these conversations. And so I'm also when I enter into the conversation, I also try to enter into the conversation where I don't want to blame
Hmm.
and I don't want to shame. So it's not a conversation about blaming anyone. It's not a conversation about shaming anyone. It's really a conversation about creating a space where we can openly hear each other. Let's present the facts and let's
Hmm.
also speak from our hearts.
Okay.
And so now as I get closer and closer to my faith, as I get closer and closer into God,
Hmm.
I'm trying to lean into grace, love, mercy, and empathy.
Okay.
So as I engage my white colleagues, I'm not trying to engage them and trying to blame them, trying to shame them. I'm
Hmm.
trying to engage them in an open dialogue where we can talk about facts and we can also talk about matters of the heart. And I'm trying to
Hmm.
listen with an empathetic ear. And I'm also trying to be that colleague to them, to where, you know what, ask me any question.
Hmm.
I may not have the answer. I can't answer for everybody, but ask the question, because I'd rather you ask me that question in front of me than to make the assumption about me or somebody else behind me.
Hmm.
And so let's ask the question so we can have the dialogue. So that's kind of how I get into that conversation.
So, as the book born out of chaos in um 2020, um fast forward to now where we're dealing with the narrative, where it is openly expressed now
Hmm.
that what I mean, there is this cancel culture and there is this attempt to cancel. um what advice would you give to someone in that framework, in this frame of mind, dealing with this in this day and age,
Mhm.
dealing with this new, um I don't even want to say concept, but dealing with this new narrative where we're dealing with now critical race theory that no one can define, but it is now taboo to say that, and now we believe it, even though we can't understand exactly what it is. We believe that society is now
Mhm.
Hmm.
shaming white individuals for the sins of their fathers.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
that's the feeling. So, I mean, what advice would you have to kind of cut through that?
Yeah. 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 That's good. That's good. First of all, I tell people all the time, what I talk about, I don't talk about critical race theory. I talk about United States history.
Hmm.
And so we can't run away from United States history. We can't run away from what happened,
Yeah.
right? Although the history has been whitewashed,
And
uh,
erased.
the accurate parts of history is they're there in plain sight.
Hmm.
And so the first thing that we have to do is we have to recognize our history
Mhm.
and recognize, realize it, and appreciate it and begin to unpack it for ourselves.
Mhm.
We can't allow, we can't wait for Dr. Lewis to tell you your history, or for you to watch it on some TV show, for you to hear through. No, you need to go look at it and study it for yourselves, right?
Mhm.
All of us. And that's white and black.
Yeah.
Because black folks, we don't know
True.
our history as well as
Hmm.
we should.
Yeah.
And Americans don't know United States history as well as we should.
That's true.
This whole notion around critical race theory, I don't even talk about it, because that's not what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about a theory that's situated in legal practices at graduate school level. I'm talking about United States history, that
Mhm.
stuff that we should have learned in seventh grade.
Yeah.
That's where and so that's where I'm going to stay, right there, right. And so again, this council culture, and I told my wife when I started this, I said, babe, uh, this is going to be a little more challenging than the diversity work that I do, and we may, as I get out there and go with this book and start talking about this stuff on a national platform, I may get some death threats.
Yep.
And she's like, well, why you say that? I said, because I'm talking at the core of identity.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm interrogating identity at this point. I'm interrogating an identity that's been established
Mhm.
for well over 200 years. And she said, what you gonna do about it? I said, God called me to do this, so I gotta follow the call.
Mhm.
So I gotta stay there, right? So I'm not necessarily concerned about being canceled,
Mm.
because I know that I have a calling. and
Mhm.
and I know that what I'm doing is a ministry. I'm not a pastor, I'm not a minister, I'm not a reverend, but I am a foot soldier of the Lord, saying that, hey, you know what I need you to do is I need you to go out here, I need you to speak to hurting hearts,
Yeah.
and I need you to help humanity in this way. And so that's what I'm doing. And so I believe that if when we speak truth to power,
Mhm.
we got to continue to speak it. And what I try to do is I try to speak it in a way in which you can hear me, right? And so, um, um, I try to come at you with my heart.
Mhm.
I try to come with you with empathy, with understanding. And if you really want to have a conversation with me, you can have that conversation with me, right? And so that's kind of how I try to get into it.
So are
Do
you
you ever?
getting the hate, like the hate mails, the race baiting accusations?
Not yet, not yet. The book was released on the 31st of March. We're beginning to market for our national college book tour. I believe once we get out there, the more that we get out there, that stuff will come, and I have to deal with it then. But we haven't received anything yet,
Good.
because we haven't been elevated yet. But once we get elevated, I'm sure it's coming.
You know, when do you ever get pushback from the black community because you're not as in your face about this? You're not as confrontational. You confront it, but you don't take this almost like dogmatic approach to accusing and putting everybody down and calling names and things like that. Your approach is more unifying. So do you feel like you ever get that pushback from the black community, who say, man, you need to be a little bit more direct about this or whatever?
Nah, you know what? I get a lot of it's not even pushback. It's joking from my family, right? From my wife and stuff. And be like, oh, okay, you taking a Martin approach. I'm Malcolm and you Martin. But I have
Oh,
to
okay.
I have to remind my wife though. I have to remind my wife that Martin, when he died, he was not popular, and Martin had a strategy. So when people want to talk about that he was nah, Martin had a strategy that invoked violence. So when you read the letter to from a Birmingham jail, you understand about Martin's strategy, and that strategy was not one that was all about this peaceful turning other cheek. It was a strategy that he knew that violence would come forward. As a matter of fact, he welcomed the violence because he needed for that violence to happen, so that
Hmm.
sleeping white America could see on TV what was happening to human beings being beat up on and being bitten by dogs and hosed down by fire hoses, so that they will wake up to the reality that human beings are the ones that are being attacked here, and not not black, but human beings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess that's what I was kind of hinting around too, is just the change in the narrative and your approach and how you're able to deliver that. Um, have you run into any difficulty, you know, in that space, um, with this newfound, position that some people are taking, or the narrative that's out there that some people are buying into, you
Yeah,
know?
not yet, but that's not to say that I won't. Right. And so as I engage with okay, so I'm invited to go to do a keynote speech up north in September, and we were talking about the book and talking about allyship, and uh, the person I was talking to was, well, we really want to talk about DEI, and we want to talk about the book, but we really want to talk about DEI and maybe stay away from race a little bit. It's like, okay.
Mhm.
So I get where they're going. But as I thought about it, I said, okay, you know what? We're gonna tie this up. We're gonna tie this in there. And so the speech that I'm going to give, it talks about how to be an ally in the post George Floyd era.
Mhm.
So you already know I'm about to hit it, right? And we're gonna talk about allyship, and we're gonna talk about DEI.
Mhm.
We're gonna talk about all that, but I can change it up a little bit to make you feel comfortable. That's okay. That's
Mhm.
okay. But we still gonna get the message in there, and I think that's my approach. My approach is this right here, and some people not gonna like it, but my approach is I gotta get the message. We gotta have a conversation.
Mhm.
So if if I can make you laugh, and if sweet potato and pumpkin pie, if that's the thing that makes you feel comfortable enough to sit down with me to have a conversation, great, because I got something for you.
Mhm.
I'm gonna challenge your assumptions. I'm gonna challenge your heart. Um, but I just can't start out with challenging your assumptions. I gotta warm you up a little bit, and then we're gonna start the conversation, right? And you'll be like, my goodness, I walked away from that man, and he asked me some questions, and I wasn't even prepared for
Mhm. When you think about the role of the black man in society right now, and the impact that he can have, because everyone knows the manhood moments and what we do with no more hiding. The foundation of it is black male excellence,
it. Hmm.
and our presence and authentic voice. And so, how do you see the role of the black man in our society, in our community, and our families?
Man, the black man, we are so misunderstood in society, in part because the narrative around the black man, in order to keep a people enslaved for 200 years, 2 centuries, in order to keep them enslaved for 200 years,
Hmm.
you had to put a system in place, and part of that system was a narrative, and that narrative created, in order for you to get people to buy into, you had to create fear. And so you
Hmm.
put this narrative of a black man being not smart, being animalistic, being a predator. When you put that narrative out there,
Hmm.
and you don't allow people for education. See, a lot of times a black man get a bad rap, and even the black community, for maybe not having high educational scores. Well, you didn't let us get educated for 200 years. You kept it
Hmm.
quiet, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so now you got And I'm not, look, I'm not making no excuses for black men who are not doing what they need to be doing.
Hmm.
I ain't making no excuses at all. I'm just trying to put things in context that say that a lot of times people want to point to there's some type of pathology with black men. No, there's no pathology. There was a system that
Hmm.
was in place that tried to stump the black man down so that he could not be the provider for him and his family as the white man was the provider for him and his family.
Hmm.
So now, when we talk about black male excellence, it is the responsibility of every black man
Hmm.
to walk into his sense of manhood. And I'm not talking about this old manhood sitting on the corner somewhere.
Hmm.
I'm talking about the sense of manhood of being a priest of your family. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the sense of the manhood of saying, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility. I tell my son who is 26 this year, I said, boy, tell me what's the definition of a man? Daddy, the definition of a man is somebody that can take care of himself and take care of somebody else,
Mm.
who can be responsible for somebody else. So just because you didn't have a baby don't mean that you're a man.
It's true.
You a sperm donor. Being a man means that you're going to take responsibility and for that person, for those people that are under your leadership, that are in your space.
Hmm.
So this whole notion of excellence for being black men, in my mind, is showing up and letting society,
Hmm.
all of society, see our potential and our power, right? Our
Yeah.
power is love. We've gotten away from this. I believe that when we begin to show up in the space uh, with true power and true love, and when we know our value,
Hmm.
whew, the things that we can do to help reshift and change society, thoughts about us, and reshift and change our own families and our own communities is great. What y'all doing right now is a direct manifestation of being responsible. Men being responsible, men saying, you know what, we're going to have this conversation. We're going to change the narrative about how people see black men. We're not going to hide any longer. To me, that's a powerful thing y'all doing.
No. Man, this has been a really good conversation and it's so rich, and if you're just joining us, you can always catch the rebroadcast, but we've had Dr. William T. Lewis, who is the author of Sweet Potato Pie or Pumpkin Pie, Courageous Conversation with My White Friends, right, about race. And so we're going to post his book so you can be able to buy the book. We'll have it on our website. But this has been a really good conversation, and we've covered a gamut of things and different perspectives through this conversation, and a lot to chew on. But we're toward the end, and so we want to give those final thoughts. And so I wanna start with T Bird. T Bird, tell us, man, what's your final thoughts?
Really just want to thank everybody for tuning in. For me, it was just a fantastic conversation. I think we covered a lot of information. I really can't think of one thing to really point out, but I really love the topic beyond colorblind because I felt like growing up in a predominantly white area, people would say that I'm colorblind, but I never wanted anybody to be colorblind because I want you to see me. I want to see you for what you are. So I think that was just a great conversation point to really like start off with. But that's it. I'm just happy to be back with the fellas. It's been about 4 weeks. Um, and that's it.
That's it, man. Thank you for that. T Patrick, what's going on? Give us some thoughts, man.
Yeah, first and foremost, I definitely enjoyed the conversation. What I did, uh, what I do like, I love the title of the book. Period. Right? Just that alone makes me be want to dig in. Not just because it's about sweet potato or pumpkin pie, but I just think it really draws that distinction of what we, not even just, you know um what we prefer, but what we thought we knew of what other people prefer. It's just interesting, and the what you shared about your experience in North Carolina, and that question you asked, and it just makes you want to understand a little bit more about how do we have this conversation in an environment that is changing rapidly,
Yeah.
where we have individuals who were in the minority and may exercise privilege but are fearful. And how do we drive that conversation? How do we? So I mean, I'm looking for pointers on having those conversations. I'm a people guy. Been in human resources probably 15 years, and I have to have difficult conversations and have to influence individuals. And so I'm always looking for something to put in my toolbox to help me with that. So I'm looking forward to grabbing a copy myself, and digging in to help me see, how to drive that conversation, because I just see it. It is it's just a lot of turmoil at this
Yeah.
point, and we're gonna need some help in having those conversations in the right construct, so that people can hear. Because I thought it was interesting how you pointed out, hey, I have the conversation in a way that someone will hear. Um, and that's what I think is powerful there. So really enjoyed the conversation, fellas. I mean, you know, I don't even, I usually have something profound to say, but I think we said all the profoundness, and shared a lot of things in here. So I mean, I'm just happy to be here, and that's it.
That's it. So sweet potato or pumpkin pie, which one you like?
Who me?
Yeah, you.
Well, listen, I
Oh
no no
no,
no
here
no
we go.
no no no. Listen. All my life, I've loved sweet potato pie, right?
Uh,
That's always a preference. However, I have learned living and where I've lived to appreciate pumpkin pie. So when I can't get sweet potato pie, I'm just as happy with pumpkin pie. You know,
T Bird, which one you prefer? You muted.
Sweet potato, sweet potato pie.
Sweet potato. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. You ever tried pumpkin?
I may have, but nah,
if he did, it's a distant memory. He said,
for sure.
I guess Dr. William T. Lewis, give us some final thoughts.
Oh man. First of all, let me say thank you. It's just been a pleasure being here with you all. And secondly, I just want to say something that came out that I spoke, and I think somebody captured as a tweetable, is that evil doesn't stop or doesn't sleep. That's the final thought. Evil doesn't sleep, and so we all got to stay awoke. Black folks, white folks. When we're talking about race, we everybody has to be stay awake, and we got to continue to do the work. So thank you, brothers, for just having me on this conversation. I really appreciate it.
That's it. That's it. Somebody said T. Patrick, we need to take your black card from you. I ain't gonna
"Listen, listen, okay, I've earned this card, but I just happen to appreciate pumpkin pie. I mean, what do you? And I couldn't tell when I was eating it at first when I looked at it, but there's a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I can have sweet potato, if I had to pick one over the other, absolutely, I'm going with pumpkin pie. That's clutch. But listen,
T
pumpkin pie can be good.
T Patrick, I'm with you, man. I prefer sweet potato pie all day long. But I
Mhm.
have a sweet tooth, and so if you put anything in my face, I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
eat it. And so if it
Yes.
happens to be pumpkin pie, that mug's getting eaten. Bottom
Yep.
line,
so
Indiscriminately.
absolutely.
so once again, we've had a great episode of Manhood Moments, and You know, we're here every first and third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock on whichever medium that you're joining us, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, also on our website. So we're appreciative of you following us. One of the things that really stood out to me today as I think back on this is the conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion. And sometimes we tend to bring those things together as we do most things, right? And so we take a concept and we think that those things are relevant, as we connect them, but we really have to break them up, right? And so as we strive to create more equitable and more inclusive communities, it's going to be important that we understand that it's about what Dr. Lewis said. It's about the heart. It's about making people know and feel that they belong in this space. And that's what No More Hiding is about. No More Hiding is about creating those safe spaces for our men, for in particular our African American men, so we can actually come out of a place of hiding, heal, and find the help that we need in this time, and be able to be impactful in our communities, in our homes, and in our purpose, whatever that looks like for you. So we're thankful for you joining us today. We're thankful for everything, for just you taking out the time to be a part of this, a part of No More Hiding in Manhood Moments. So, real quick, Father, we thank and praise you. We glorify you, magnify you for everything that you're doing, everything that you've done. We ask, Lord God, that you would continue to have your way like only you can. We pray, Lord God, that you would send your blessings, Lord Jesus, and that you would cover that man and that woman who loves him, Lord, whether it's his daughter, whether it's his wife, whether it's his sister or mother, whether it's his son, whether it's his brother, whether it's his father. We pray, Lord God, that you would continue, Lord Jesus, to lift us up as men as we grow, as we try to become the men that you've designed us to be. Remember, Lord, Dr. Lewis, Lord Jesus, and that you would bless every endeavor, protect them, Lord, and continue to do what only you can do in this time. This we thank you, we praise you, we glorify you. In Jesus' name we pray. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Be blessed.